Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this session of order revision to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our treaty water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation in Treaty 3 territory. With me today via Zoom is Diane Knight. In this hearing room with me is Ian Mann, the other panel member, and my name is Harvey Diamond. The City of Winnipeg Assessment Department is represented by Ryan Valderrama, and our secretary is Stephen Munn. To the Zoom participants of this hearing, please note that you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You'll then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested being described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing must be sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons or assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decision based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions in respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemption from taxation. And should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of the appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the session testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence for an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. Receive the Board's order by receipt mail as soon as possible. All information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of a public record. And today we'll be hearing items 1 through 6. And Mr. Lam, please swear the assessor and the applicant.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Ryan Valderrama.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, could you please stand?
Thank you, stand.
Please state your full name.
Rocky Newton.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated.
Well, when you're ready, you can proceed. The first property we're dealing with is 254 Wilton Crescent.
Just before you proceed, can I just check something? What does your brief on this property that you received from us? Is there a date on that top left?
March 3rd, 2022.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, this was a mistake. This was the brief from the supplemental, which was heard earlier in the year. So there's another one, and I guess that hadn't been filed specifically for this hearing. I didn't just caught that now, so I'll have to deal with it differently.
Well, your evidence is what we have.
Yes, I understand. I understand. Yeah. I just want to let you know it was the wrong one.
Well, Rocky, as you know, you've been doing this as long as I have. Verbally, you can give us any information you wish to do so.
That's why I give you the heads up on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first property has a file number of 22-942. It has a roll number of 120-978-06305. It is located at 254 Wellington Crescent. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using the reference date of April 1st, 2021. The property assessment value is $3,427,000. And the classification is residential, liability of taxable. It is a residential apartment with 1 building and 3 stories with an actual and effective year built of 2020. It has 13 suites with 11 indoor parking. It has a land area of 9,472 square feet and a planned area of 4,768 square feet. It has a gross floor area of 14,304 square feet. On page 3 of my brief are the photos of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. Has 13 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,466.11. Its gross potential rent is around $228,713. That's a vacancy rate of 4.2%. In terms of vacancy dollars, it is 9,606. It has an effective gross income of $219,107. Using an expense ratio of 38.21% or expenses in dollars of $83,721. The net operating income is $135,386. Using the capitalization rate of 3.95%, the capitalized income is $3,427,494 or $3,427,000 rounded. On page 5 are some of the rent comparables. The first one is located at 277 Arbuthnot Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,497. The second one is located at 570 Stradbroke Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,796. The third one is located at 785 Dorchester Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,644. And the last one is located at 522 River Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,611. On the next page, page 6, is the map of the subject property and comparable rents or leases that were presented earlier. Next page is the capitalization rates. A direct capitalization method is used to convert a property's single year of income into an indication of value by dividing the estimated net operating income by an appropriate capitalization rate. Capitalization rates can be derived from properties that have sold by dividing each property's net operating income by its sale price. For the 2023 general assessment, or as of April 1st, using April 1st, 2021 as a reference date, capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income and sale prices that were time-adjusted to April 1st, 2021. The assessed values produced by the application of these model-generated capitalization rates were compared to sale prices, and assessment to sale price ratios were calculated. The resulting ratio statistics for the Assessment and Taxation Department's income-producing models satisfied the standards specified and set forth in the Standard on Ratio Studies published by the International Association of Assessing Officers. Assessment and Taxation Department's capitalization rates are further supported by comparison with real estate market reports from Colliers International Canada, CBRE National Research, and Cushman & Wakefield. The following chart compares ATD's or Assessment and Taxation Department's capitalization rates with the published rates by fitting Assessment and Taxation Department's rates into the property type categories used in these reports. Assessment and Taxation Department's property type classes are more comprehensive so that they cover every property type in the city. The 20th and 80th percentiles show the range of capitalization rates used by Assessment and Taxation Department for 60% of the parcels within the specific property type. In many cases, the published rates fall within 20th and 80th percentiles, indicating the tenability of the capitalization rates derived by the Assessment and Taxation Department. If we go down the chart, we'll see a section called multifamily. All of the multifamily has a range of between 4.8% to 5.6%. And the other columns are from Collier, CBRE, and Cushman and Wakefield. And then on the next page, I do have the capitalization rate evidence. The following is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They are not meant to be comparable specific to this subject property. Net operating income has been developed through stabilizing owner-reported income and expense information. Capitalization rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. In consideration of time, Mr. Chairman, pages 7 and 8 will also be applied to the other properties that we have today for this hearing.
That's
And
satisfactory, Mr. Valderrama. I'm going to
I'm
get
sorry.
that satisfactory. We'll take in that all your presentations include what you just indicated regarding pages 7 and 8 to save time later.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 9 is the income and expense information submitted by the I believe this is a property owner or property manager. And I think that's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Mr. Nick, any questions of the assessor?
Yes. Sorry, have you inspected this property?
No, I wasn't able to.
And the page 4, your valuation, was this all done by the model?
Yes, they're all model derived parameters.
So obvious question is on your model page 7, your 20th and 80th percentile range from 4.8 to 5.6% for caps. So how does this property end up being at 3.95%?
As mentioned in the blurb, Mr. Chairman, the 20th and 80th percentile range here indicate the 60% of the parcels that we handle within our department. It may be possible that some properties, which is about 40%, may fall outside of the range, Mr. Chairman.
And in regard to that, on page 8, you have some samples, and how are these calculated?
As indicated also, these are net operating income divided by the sale price.
And where did the net operating income come from?
I believe these are from the submitted income and expense information.
Okay, so for example, the first one with the sale date of October 9th, 2020, what year would the income and expense information come from? What period?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have that included in the evidence. However, this was reviewed by one of my colleagues in the department, and these are within the time frame or the reference date of April 1st, 2021.
So do you know if these were done at time of sale or from a period preceding time of sale?
The time of these sales are all before. So in the process of the sale date is in 2020. So I believe what was used here is the, if I'm not mistaken, the 2019. However, I didn't do the calculation, so I'm not 100% sure.
Well, that's what we've generally been hearing. Now, in that case, was there any adjustment for an additional year of income appreciation before the sale?
I'm not aware of any.
And when these were researched, did you have any information on the financing?
As mentioned, I'm not aware of any particular details.
So you're not aware whether or not the purchaser obtained a new mortgage or was able to take over an existing mortgage?
No, I'm not aware of any of those information.
Now, 1833 Pembine and 859 Grosvenor, you're aware that was a portfolio sale?
I'm not aware of those information.
Okay, well, they didn't sell on the same day and it was in the news. So I thought most people would have seen it. And you weren't aware that there's another property in the portfolio that was sold as well?
No, I'm not aware.
On page 9, the income and expense form, the revenue is fairly close to what you have, but there are no expense listed. Is there a reason? Did you look into it?
No, this is the only income and expense information I found for the subject property, Mr. Chairman.
No, I was just wondering if you looked into it because it was missing, and I know it sometimes comes up, but you are aware that this is new construction, so they did not have a tax bill. They did not spend any money on repairs and maintenance. I don't know if you were aware of that.
No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. So, man, do you have any questions of the assessor?
I do with respect to your calculation, Mr. Valderrama, of the net operating income. You had an expense allowance of 38.2% or around $83,700. From what was that derived, given that that seems to be quite a bit more than the expenses as noted on the expense or list of income and expenses filed by the applicant property? Where did you get those from?
Again, the parameters, Mr. Chair, that are on page 4, those parameters are model derived.
Are the rents model derived as well, or are they taken directly from the income statement filed by the applicant or the applicant property?
These are all model derived, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, sir.
And do you have any questions?
I do not.
Mr. Valderrama, I see that you're asking for a cap rate of 3.95%, which is lower than anything you've submitted. What evidence do you have to establish that we should consider that as a reasonable cap rate on this property?
Mr. Chair,
Particular property.
sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand 3.95% as model derived cap rate is low compared to the range that I have presented. But as I have mentioned earlier, in the blurb of the cap rate, capitalization rate, the ranges that the range that we provide from 4.8 to 5.6 are only the 60% of the parcels that we handle. There are also other parcels out there, the 40% that may be outside of the range. And considering that this building is almost brand new building, capitalization rate, in my opinion, a low capitalization rate, in my opinion, may be warranted due to the fact that there is a low risk in which this property may have any issues or problems in terms of generating income, especially if we compare our gross potential rent, the model derived gross potential rent, to the actual gross potential rent, we produce a way lower rent. So I mean, the risk of achieving gross potential rent, the model derived, which is 228,713, may be achievable and may not be risky in terms of the capitalization in relation to the low capitalization rate that the model derived.
Okay, well, and I agree, it's a new property, so it's going to need very little maintenance. It's in a very good location on Wellington Crescent, so that's obviously, going to derive a low capitalization rate, but I still don't see evidence that you've presented that shows that 3.95 is a reasonable capitalization rate.
Mr. Chair, I understand that on my page 8, there's a blurb that says it may not be, or all the capitalization rate evidence that I have attached may not be comparable to the subject property directly. However, we can see a trend here that there are some sales in there that produce a really low cap rate in the market. So I think the model generated 3.95% may not be far off in what the market is indicating nowadays, or as of April 1st, 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I had one more follow-up, or read.
If it's a follow-up based on what I have
Yes,
asked, certainly you can re-examine that.
In the cap rate analysis, and you had mentioned in the market, sorry. So I'm just going to, never mind, I'll just deal with that in my own presentation. It's fine.
Okay. So then you can begin your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it is the wrong brief. This was from the supplemental with an effective date of April 1st, 2018. However, page 3 is the first year of income that was established on this property. So in the first column, it shows that in 2021, and I don't have the precise date because this income is showing from a previous year, what the anticipated revenue was, and it coincides with the numbers that we looked at. Essentially, we have we're not going to treat this potential all the income as potential because we're still in an absorption period right now, and so we're using a number of 16,473 during lease up, and the expense ratio. This was from last year's assessment. We looked at the numbers they had, and there was no history, and we used that last time around. And this time, I know the assessor's gone to an expense ratio, a higher one of 38.21%. So it's we're using an expense ratio which would generate a higher NOI. And again, it's based on a lease up. The projected date of lease up is in the next few months, and they're just heading towards that now. And right now, they're dealing with a first year lease up is the tenants who moved in the beginning, who obviously got in with rental discounts, and their term is up, and it's renewal time. And so there's always first, second, and third year. You lose the first year tenants and you roll them over and you have to start again. It just ratchets downwards. And that's why we're using the number. Now, the NOI does not differ that much from the assessor. And we're $9,000 apart. And I don't think that's the major issue here. The major one is the cap rate. And the cap rate, we changed our workup this year, and there's some evidence we'll show you later about Colliers. What we're reacting to, and I got to say this, I come to the boards a lot, and I tell you not stories, but information about the market. I am not the source. The source of this information is Colliers International and the Canadian division, and what were we doing with cap rates. And we're seeing somewhat what the assessor is seeing. We're seeing people claiming cap rates that are ridiculous. The problem with them is that they're below the cost of money. So if you put a 3.95% cap rate on a building, you may not even pay your mortgage. And the whole concept behind a cap rate isn't for us to determine value. It was invented by banks so they could figure out how much mortgage you can carry. And this is what it all really relates to. So later on, I'll show you the actual report. And we're trying to get people to move back to remember it's the cost of money that comes before anything. Now, the problem with these cap rates is that the assessors, by the way, were not done at time of sale. The properties they brought in, I know several of them were going through above guideline increases. So you can apply for that if you do a project, and instead of say the normal at that time, I think you could get a 1.5% increase annually. You could say, well, I'm redoing my windows. I would like a 12% increase. You go to the board, and the board says, well, we'll give you 9%. That's just an actual example from one of my clients. And then they phase it in. So when you have an old statement, it's not reflecting those above guideline. And I had the opportunity to review 7 cap rate samples that were sent to me by another assessor, and they all indicated this is what they're using. And so the income that was sold on a year later should have been bumped up by not the historical amount, but by either the above guideline, or in the case where no work was done, by even just the guideline. And there was also some issues when they stabilize. They apply 5% for management. Now, what they mistakenly do in their workups is the typical property manager spends 5%, but it's split between the management fee and the property manager's salary. So what the assessment department does is they leave the property manager's salary in, and then take the management fee and increase from 3.5% to 5%. And that's why they're coming up with these numbers. And I'm just giving you the synopsis of what's wrong with it. And this is my first multifamily hearing this year. So we're still working on our presentation, and hopefully we'll have more of this to demonstrate later on. Essentially, 3.95% does not exist. Now, the reports market reports that both the assessor brought forward and we brought forward indicate that the lowest you should expect to see is 5% on the best property. There's no dispute there. The Colliers report includes closing costs. So our actually lowest number is at 5.25 to 5.3%. And that's what the reasonable purchase should be on income, where that particular income is used to establish the sale. The problem we're having in our own company is when you get a rate that's based on remediation work done and above guideline increases coming in, of course the income's going to go up. And of course it's going to show an artificially low rate pre-sale. But that doesn't allow you to use it for properties that are sold on existing income. It's the mistake appraisers make, and it's the mistake the assessors make. Well, we're just trying to look for a reasonable amount. So we've actually capped this, and I changed this because this is last year's workup at 5.3%. And given that my numbers weren't made for this board, we're actually going to, I just referred to the assessor's NOI of 135,386 at 5.3%, and that value is 2,554,453. 2554453, rounded to 2,554,000. And as the assessor was going to extend, we're extending him the privilege of reading his information from this one to refer to the other 5 here today. I hope when I get to my material, I would get the same opportunity to show you how this was worked out. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hugo. Mr. Valderrama, any questions, the applicants?
Yeah, just a quick one. In terms of the cap rate, that was it's Mr. Chairman, the 5.3 is based on what was it based on sales or anything like that?
It's based on the method. Essentially, direct capitalization is a dead issue right now in moving markets. Our valuation and market valuation is moving towards the old-fashioned way, which is more mortgage equity or band of investment. So you'll see in the information later that this is what we're now using for investment properties. We're following the money because too many of these sales are not being shown properly. When you stabilize a sale, you have to base it on the anticipation of future income, not the history of income that followed. What was in the minds of the purchasers when they bought the property at the time of sale? Did they expect to make, when I look at some of these examples, and I have to admit that I'm somewhat familiar with 1833 Pembina and 859 Grosvenor from work I've done on them. That was not the anticipation what they were going to earn at time of sale. They were going to be earning a different number than the NOI that the assessors provided. And that's what one must be focused on. And with COVID, it's made things even worse because we are seeing different motivations, but primarily what we're seeing is the massive change in the interest rate. So 5 years ago, if you're if you're investing in an apartment, you're going to be looking at interest rates, and you may have them fluctuate, say, between 4 and 4.25%. So when you make your decision to purchase, you know that you could have a variance of about 5% on your expenses towards the mortgage. Now it doesn't come up in capitalization because the 5% variance is just a very, very small issue. But recent sales during COVID have seen the federal banks toying with interest rates. Banks in Europe, for example, offer a negative rate now, but the rates during the prime of COVID were available through CMHC I've seen as low as 1.6%. Now, before that time and after that time, the rates went back to 3.75%. So 40% variance in your mortgage costs. So what does that, when a buyer can assume a 1.6% mortgage?
Mr. I can tell you, you've been going on so long, I forgot what the question is already.
He asked me how we did the rates.
Yeah.
But the point is that we're not talking about small variances in interest rates. We're seeing very, very large variances. And which is why Colliers, in the information I'll get to later, is trying to bring some sense to how you do a cap rate.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Just on that.
Just, oh, sorry, just a follow-up on that one. So on page 5 of the brief, of your brief, I understand you're not relying on this evidence. However, I just wanted to clarify, page 5 is also on other briefs as well, correct?
Page 5, yes, I think it's this is just the textbook, yes.
Yes, correct. Okay. And this question would apply to the other properties, since this page 5 is also in the other properties. Mr. Neufeld, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned that you're steering away from the traditional direct capitalization methodology on how to derive a capitalization rate using direct capitalization method. However, you included this methodology on your page 5 of your briefs, correct?
Well, yes, but the methodology on page 5 was just an explanation of the theory behind direct capitalization. And the entire chapter deals with application. And the point being is that in this market with moving money the way it is, the due diligence required has gone a step further. So every time you review a cap rate, you've got to know the interest rate, whether the mortgage was assumed or a new one was procured, and the rates of each. It's just become a major factor. In the past, we could often just say, well, we're appraisers. We don't care about the mortgage amount because it doesn't factor in. And what I was saying is because 5 years ago, there was very, very little rate variances. Now today they're huge. So it just means a greater due diligence. So if you don't have that information, then you can't adjust your rate for the mortgage variances. And and we're trying to react to that because we're a large company who are advising people on billions of dollars in purchases. We're not going out to tell people, oh, we can cap your apartment at 3.5%, because that's not reasonable. You still have to follow the money markets. And what we're trying to do is bring the people back from the inaccuracies of using the typical sale is, as I said, is going to be based on how much you're going to make next year. So if there is anticipation of a big upside, you will indicate a lower rate. But if there isn't any, you should not apply the rate from one that does have an upside. That's really the problem that corporate is dealing with.
No further question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I do. So in your presentation, it's dated March 2022. You show a cap rate of 5%, and you're looking for a value of $2,536,000. But in your verbal presentation, you changed the cap rate to 5.3 and a value of $2,554,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Manning, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, Brenda. Thanks.
I don't either. Thank you. Okay, well, along with the next item on the agenda is meeting on Roslyn Road. And Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready.
Just gonna pull up the files, Mr. Chair. Open it up. It's not letting me open. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Property has a file number of 22-890. Its roll number is 12032438000. It is located at 21 Roslyn Road. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. using the reference date of April 1st, 2021. The property assessed value is $18,387,000. It's classified as a residential 2 with a taxable liability. It is an residential apartment with 1 building and 12 stories. Its actual and effective year built is 1979. It has 112 suites with 141 indoor parking. The land area is 41,210 square feet and a planned area of 11,300 square feet. Its gross floor area is 135,600 square feet. And on page 3, I do have the subject properties photos. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. It is showing 112 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,462.71. It is yielding a gross potential rent of $1,965,882. It has a vacancy rate of 3.2%. In terms of dollars, it is $62,908. It has an effective gross income of $1,902,974, using an expense ratio of 42.51%, or $808,954. The net operating income is $1,094,020. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.95%, the capitalized income is $18,386,891, or $18,387,000 rounded. On the next page, page 5, I do have 4 rent comparables. The first one is located at 1205 Grant Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,486. The next one is located at 155 Wellington Crescent. That's an average monthly rent of $1,870. The third one is located at 850 Cambridge Street. Has an average monthly rent of $1,482. And the last one is located at 180 Roslyn Road. That's an average monthly rent of $1,547. Page 6 is the map of the subject property and the comparable leases or the comparable rents. Page 7 is the capitalization rates. And on page 8, the capitalization rate evidence. On pages 9 and 10, that's where the 2020 income and expense information is located. As you can see, the actual income and expenses are there, Mr. Chairman, and that's my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, you have any questions?
Yes, page 4, is this valuation all from the model?
Let me just go back to it. Yes, these are all model-derived parameters.
The rent that is listed here on both 4 and 5 is $1,462.71 per month. Can you confirm that that is the model's rent, not the actual?
I believe it is derived from the model, yes.
Okay. And on the statement, so that comes out to gross potential of $1,965,000 after a vacancy $1,902,000. Then is that correct?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question again?
Then that extrapolates to $1,965,000 for potential income and effective income of $1,902,000. Then is that correct?
Yes.
On the
Based
statement,
on page 4.
on the statement provided page 9, you'll note that the potential income is actually $1,696,700. Did you look at that?
698? Is it 698? I believe it's 698,700.
698.
700.
Yes, you're correct. Sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's a $200,000 difference from your workup, correct?
Correct.
And did you do the same with the review of the expenses? You're at a ratio driven amount, I take it 808,000.
These are all model derived.
Correct.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And did you compare that to actual expenses?
Yes.
And I have a number of 1,076,000 for actual expenses. Did you calculate that?
Based on the income and expense mailer here, the total expenses actual is 1,094,985.
Yeah, but that's there's some you can see that there's a mortgage payment in there, and then there's two credits for principal reduction and capitalized asset. So it's close to that number. But yes,
Might be close.
Approximately, we are okay now. So, but that again varies from yours by $270,000. Then, correct?
I don't have the math, but if that's the math, then it's close. Yes, by 200,000. Correct.
And in
If
going,
that is the math.
right, in going through the statement, did you notice any large variances between the budget number and the actual expense? Like, was there an unforeseen problem or anything, or something they hadn't budgeted for?
None. Well, nothing really that jumps out.
No, as a matter of fact, the repairs and maintenance actually came in under budget by $37,000. You see that?
Repairs and maintenance. I'm just going through it again. There's 36,000
Yeah.
under. Yes.
Okay. So what would be wrong with using actuals for this property?
I'm sorry.
What would be wrong? Why weren't the actual income and expenses considered?
I just felt that I'm going with the model parameters on this one.
Oh, in this case, the model applied 5.95% cap rate as compared to the last one at 3.95. Now, what are the factors that would make this differ in the model?
There could be a lot of factors like age, location, size of the property and all that. However, whatever weight was given or how it was assigned, particularly which factors determined the varying cap rates from one property to another, I am not, I don't have that information. I'm not sure why this one is being assigned as 5.95%. Again, this is an assessment, so it seems like we're comparing two assessments here, two capitalization rate assessments here.
No, I think what I'm trying to find out is how the model works, and after 20 years, I still don't know. So it's a closely guarded secret.
I understand the concern.
Now you were saying about location. Well, for example, this is on the river, and the previous one was on a riverfront view. Wouldn't they be fair? Shouldn't they be fairly similar in that respect?
Again, as I mentioned, I'm not sure how the model has assigned
So
cap rates
you're
on different
arguing
properties.
for a lower cap, higher one.
No, I'm
Yeah.
just saying the other ones were wrong. You had mentioned size. Do you know if the model has a way of determining what size is optimal and what size would have a lower cap and what would have a higher cap? Do you know any of that?
No, I don't know. I don't have any way to determine that.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mann, do you have any questions to the assessor?
Just one with respect to the variation between the income and expenses as supplied by the subject property and your modeling. Do you do either a line by line comparison, or are you aware if the model does a comparison to come up with a particular value to assign either the expenses or the income or both?
I do believe the model is going with expense ratios instead of line by line, Mr. Chairman.
And expense ratios would include particular categories.
Yes, and yes, I would say yes on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Ms.
you,
Knight,
sir.
do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, Ms. Falrama, on this one, I have to tell you, I find, I know you've asked the same question, but 5.95 seems to be a fairly high cap rate on this property, everything being equal. Can you tell us why this property should be capitalized that high?
As I've mentioned earlier, Mr. Chairman, there could be a lot of factors like age, location, size of the property, as determined by the model. And I have no information on particularly how the model reacts or how it assigns capitalization rates on specific properties, other than how it calculates it, net operating income divided by sale prices, and I'm not sure how the particulars behind it.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
because I do know that the property is in a similar area, similar, Roslyn Road on the river is pretty comparable with Crescent. Anyway,
Correct,
away
Mr.
from there.
Chairman. And if there's anything, if I'm gonna compare the two properties that we have discussed so far, this one is way bigger.
Oh,
This
absolutely.
one is way older compared to the other one. So I
Yeah.
mean, these factors may come into play considering capitalization rates.
This one has a huge amount of indoor parking, which other ones have. But anyway, just swing away from there. I'm looking over the expenses that are referred to on, I guess, in your brief that were submitted by the applicant. And I see in that one of the expenses is mortgage payment and mortgage payment reduction. Are those things that are considered in the model?
No, they are not, Mr. Chairman.
So-
That one thing I'm sure they're not. Mortgage principal reduction, mortgage payments, and capitalized assets.
And bank charges are normally recognized, isn't that correct? Because
Interest charges, I believe they are bank interest charges. I think that's considered, yes, correct.
in the event, have you gone through the expenses submitted by the applicant you put into your brief, and are any of them inappropriate, or are they all? Like, if we're going to use actual expenses, I'd like you to have an opportunity to advise us the assessor's position on them.
As outside of those, I believe the other line items may be considered without
but not-
reviewing line by line, but outside of those that I mentioned, capitalized assets, mortgage principal reduction, mortgage payments, amortization, I believe the others may be considered. Mr.
Okay, thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Any submission by the parties on this one?
I'm not done.
Well, you
I
asked your
have
question.
none.
Yeah, no, I just haven't presented yet.
Well, you haven't said, you're absolutely right.
I was just paying my parking.
You're absolutely right. I saw you.
I got
And you
my,
got done.
I got my parking done.
Okay, your presentation now, Mr.
Yeah,
Guerra.
thank you. No, this is the right one. So what we're doing this year is changing our formatting to deal with the issues of the money markets and the misrepresentation of cap rates. And in this case, for some reason, we tend to agree with the assessor on the cap rate. We're right in the same ballpark. And what we do with these, just briefly taking through at page 2, is our calculation. And we start with the Collier's Prime at 5, and then make adjustments on a numeric scale for different things. And I mentioned closing costs. We have to take those out because we include closing costs when we do our caps. The flooding risk is a real issue because every year there's a risk of flooding and there's riverbank stabilization going on. It's a minor issue. The coverage ratio is a lower parking ratio than the amount of bedrooms that there are. And it's actually 90 parks per 112 units, which is still below the ratio of 1.4 to 1, which is a current building code. Year built, it's a minor issue. Quality and condition just reflective of the age of the property. And that's how we come up with 5.95% on this one. But that's not the issue. At stake, the issue is the income. And on page 1 is the summary of the income and expenses for the last 3 years. And you can see that there's a general progression in income. This would be representative of residential tenancy branch allowable increases and then minor variations in vacancies. So we use the last year of income as it continues to grow. And remember, I was making the point earlier with the assessor, if you're using a 2019 statement on this property, for example, you would have income of $1,662,000. But if it sells in 2020, the income was $1,698,000. And that's a problem. That's a flaw in the way they do their cap rates. They're not at time of sale. Going to the expenses, you can see that there's some variances ranging from a low year of $753,000 to a high year of $1,076,000, and we average those for the 3 years, come to $888,000. That leaves our NOI at $810,000 and capped at 6%. I mean, we could live at 5.95%. That's not a major issue. That gets our value. The question the board brought up about going through the statements, just point out, we produced them page 5 and 4 and 5. And so we are using the actual income, and you can see on page 4 that there are some vacancies that have been accounted for in the income. And the residential vacancy this year was with the discounts was about $18,000. The actual expenses, you can compare the actuals to the budget, and there's nothing that sticks out as being extraordinary. Like there's no big repair that shot up the amount that they had budgeted. Page 5, there is a question of treatment of the mortgage payment. You'll notice it's listed as an expense, but there's 2 entries directly under that detail credits for the principal reduction and the capitalizing of assets. Those 2 equal mortgage payments, so they cancel each other out. So they're not in there. Now there's one listed above that was taken out, the amortization. That is not in. So the number should be $1,094,000 less the $20,915, which for some reason is $2,000 off what we actually have. I don't know what happened there, but it's a small amount. The rest of the expenses would be expected. Bank charges, cost of running your account, that's perfectly normal because it costs money to run a bank account. And so our NOI is we're using the actual, and that's really what our issue is with this particular property.
Thank you. So around any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. On page 5 of the appellant's brief, this is also in line with the question I got from the chairman a while ago regarding what should be looked at to be included and excluded in terms of expenses. I just noticed also, Mr. Chairman, that there is a rehabilitation row on page 5, which is separate from repairs and maintenance. Is Mr. Neufeld, would you be able to clarify that one?
There's ongoing work for this property, and it's not one big major renovation, because that would be in the millions. What it is, it's just ongoing repairs over and above ongoing repairs over and above regular maintenance. So what it is, for example, is you have a I forget how many stories this is, 12-story building. So the rehabilitation scheme would be a scheduling of, for example, replacing carpets in a hallway, and you could do 2 hallways a year or 4 hallways a year.
I think the question's asked if you know what it was. You're surmising.
No, I know.
I'd like to see evidence of what exactly that expense.
Okay. Well, that would require a different part of the statement.
Yeah.
But I don't surmise these are clients of mine. I've been go to the buildings and I go through their work list.
You're giving evidence though, and you don't know what the rehabilitation exactly was. You're surmising.
If it's listed here as an expense,
Yeah.
that's not surmising that it's an expense, because then otherwise it'd be listed as a capital cost.
Well, it could be a capitalized expense.
I know, then they can't put it in a working statement.
You're not sure where.
They got to put it in capitalization. So there's various things that you do that are on, okay. You, tenant leaves and you got to fix the place up for the next tenant. That's an ongoing expense. So they put it in a slot. This is the way they run their business. And then they can put it in this category, and then it actually gives them an indication of turnover and how much it's costing us to turn over a unit. Some properties, they might spend $200 on a paint job, and some do flooring, and sometimes you have to replace your appliances when you have a turnover. It's been a long time. So this goes into that category. It's called short-lived expenses.
Okay.
And that's explains the variance. And thank you for catching that, because the previous year you noticed it was 753,000. That's just an indication of not having to do the turnover that year. But it's ongoing, so you can't. It's a chapter. It's in there.
Any other questions, Mr. Boardroom?
Yeah, in line with that one, just a follow-up. So in terms of people leaving or there's a tenant turnover, wouldn't the costs to fix the unit fall under repairs and maintenance? When I'm looking at this,
well, here I am going to surmise, because there's 2 ways you can do it. You can expense it directly and take a chance with CRA, or you can set up a schedule that goes with the depreciation schedule they've set out. And typically, I think it's a 10-year cycle, or a 10-year depreciation schedule they allow. So it's probably just to deal with the CRA, and they will, by tracking it this way, then they can, this isn't plumbing repair. This isn't repairing damage. This is just ongoing work required on suites. So no, this is the way they run their books.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Ms. Knight, any questions to the applicant?
I do not, thank you.
Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. First of all, Mr. Neufeld, you don't prepare these income statements. These are provided to you by your client? Or by-
That's correct.
Okay. My next question is with respect to, and I'm not going to go through this line by line. You did talk about the capitalized assets and the mortgage principal reduction, offsetting the mortgage payment of zeroing out,
Right.
except for the $2,000. I see as well, just one other line, property tax appeal, $16,305. That's an expense that should probably be zeroed out as well.
Oh, no, it isn't. It isn't because it's a professional expense. And it's always an expense. They don't occur every year. They occur every 2 to 3 years. And so in the tax account, the way they run theirs, they put it in admin. And you can see below them, they would have the fixed expense, the property taxes, $212,000. So both of those are the expense. Now, in cases where a refund is granted, then the credit would go in there as well as a negative adjustment. It's a fact of life, and it's an expense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have no questions. So we'll go on with the next item, which is 260 Webwork Street. Mr. Valderano, when you're ready.
Let me just open up the file. Okay, the next property has a file number of 22-899. It has a roll number of 12023081000. It is located at 260 Wentworth Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. It is assessed at $2,662,000. It is classified as a residential 2 with a taxable liability. The property is a residential apartment with 1 building, 2 stories. Its actual year built is 1953 with an effective year built of 1978. It has 21 suites with 7 outdoor parking. It has a land area of 12,063 square feet, a plan area of 5,600 square feet, and a gross floor area of 16,800 square feet. On page 3 are a couple of photos for the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. It has 21 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $956.48. Has a gross potential rent of $241,033. Has a vacancy rate of 4.2% and $10,123 in terms of dollar amount. It has an effective gross income of $230,910. Applying an expense ratio of 44.08% or $101,785. We have a net operating income of $129,125. Applying the capitalization rate of 4.85%, the capitalized income is $2,662,371 or $2,662,000. On page 5, I do have 4 rent comparables here. The first one is located at 561 Warsaw Avenue. has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,177. The second one is located at 250 Hugo Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of 1,097 square feet. Dollars, $1,097. Sorry about that. The third one is located at 349 Daly Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,066. And the last one is located at 571 Wardlaw Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $906. On page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable leases. Page 7 is the capitalization rates chart. Page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And pages 9 and 10 is where the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property is. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Steve,
sir.
any questions?
Yes, I'm just kind of curious. In this case, the statements on page 9 and 10 are very, very similar to the value summary on page 4. Is this just coincidence, or were they reviewed in preparation for this role?
Let me just double check that one. Double check. They're close, however, they're not really. The page 4 parameters are model-driven parameters.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman.
And just confirm that this is the same company managing and actually owning the previous property on Roslyn Road. You're aware of that?
The heading is the same.
Right.
If that's the owner.
Well, in this case, it is the owner, but it is the same state, the same company, correct?
That produced the income statement, correct?
All right. And do you have a date on this when it underwent substantial renovation? Did you look up permits?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get more information regarding the renovations that were done on this property, Mr. Chairman.
And on the capitalization at 4.85, then this was placed at the highest end of the range of your 20th percentile then, correct? I'm just wondering.
Lowest percent, yeah, 4.8, based on the 60% of parcels in the city.
Yes, and I was just wondering, you had brought up with one issue being, 2 issues actually of age, size, and also location. And this one's older than the one we just looked at, and yet has a lower cap. But are you saying the model selected this?
Yes, the model selected this. However, in terms of the effective year built, I believe this property is pretty close with the other ones effective year built.
Oh, okay. So there was effective year built was 1978. So and that number was put in by assessment department staff then?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
I do not, thanks.
Ms. Knight, do you have any
Thank you,
questions?
sir.
I do not. I'm just going to step out for 1 second to grab a jacket. It's a little chilly here today. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I have questions, but go ahead and I'll ask you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I'm back.
Thank you. So I guess, Mr. Bolorama, the question I have is, I think Mr. Newfield actually alluded to it as well. This property seems to be in not as nice location as the previous one we just dealt with. And I'm just wondering why it would have a 4.85, you said a 4.85 cap rate by the model.
Again, as I've mentioned earlier, I have no information regarding which weight or how much weight does the model is giving to particular properties in terms of assigning capitalization rate. Just by looking at this property, I believe this one is smaller compared to the previous one. If I'm going to compare it in terms of age, they're pretty much in the same effective year age, or that I'm looking at. They're pretty much close. And other than that, you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that it is in the same location. It looks like that's the only factor I'm seeing right now. It's the size.
Because I look at it, and Russell Road, I think, is a better location. That's my opinion. And certainly parking is significantly different. The other one has more indoor spots than units. This one has only 7 outdoor spots for 21 suites. So, it's got a lot less parking. So I just, just wondering how the model assigns cap rates. Okay, but you can't.
That's a fair statement.
So I'm just letting you know my concerns. Okay,
Fair statement, Mr. Chairman.
Your turn.
Thank you. Our incomes are so close that you'd think we were working together, so we won't bother dealing with it. But I do want to point out one issue on this. This came up during questioning in 21 Roslyn. So on page 5, my report, you'll note that there's a header called rehabilitation, and there's nothing listed in there because this unit was totally rehabilitated in the previous years, and therefore the need for ongoing rehabilitation, such as a suite by suite basis, does not show up, and it won't show up for a few years until it starts to get run down again. So I just want to let you know that there's a consistency in the way these statements are prepared, and it's the same company doing it. And it's also one of the reasons why when we do our calculations, we average out expenses. We don't just take 1 year. For example, the last one, it was $1,076,000. We applied $200,000 less than that because they do have to be averaged out.
We're finished with the last one. You're giving evidence on a previous one.
No, I'm giving
you are though.
Evidence on the methodology of this particular ownership.
That's fine. Go ahead.
And I think that I'm just.
The last one is closed. So
Yeah, no, I no surmising happening here is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
The cap rate is the issue. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to start to talk about what we've been doing this year with cap rates. And on page 22 is the beginning of our cap rate report, and page 25 shows Winnipeg. And the range is generally between 5% and 6%. And when they mean low, they mean that's as low as it should ever go. And that's the best quality product. Page 19 has the description of what they would be, what we cover. So low rise, low density multifamily comprising 4 stories or fewer, with or without elevators, concrete or wood, surface parking, few amenities. Now that's somewhat similar to the category. Also on top of page 19, and again, this isn't my lookup, this is Collier's. The concept of direct capitalization, we're calling it dormant. And the market is now looking at the spread between interest rates and returns to determine caps, because a cap is a tool primarily to determine your ability to pay a mortgage, which we then piggyback in an assessment and appraisal to determine value. And the other point is not all product is equal. There's not a publication every day and says today's cap rate is this. it differs by property. Page 21 shows, these are the 23 points, and these are not my points. Again, these are Collier's points. These are the 23 points we keep looking at. And here is an explanation of how we rate the points. Now, the actual assigning of points was done by us, but tells you some of the issues we're working on. And as we refer to this particular property, some of the points we brought up were the closing costs. So here we say Collier's includes closing costs. The market does not. An adjustment is required. And that number is actually pretty close to the actual amount of money, land title transfer fees and commissions. And so our cap rate adds that into the capital cost of acquisition. So this adjustment takes it out and brings it to, so we're talking about the same type of product. That's a feature of Collier's. The coverage ratio has to do with, you have enough parking space in this case, and we have 7 stalls for 21 units. No, so there's a negative adjustment there. The building size, about halfway down the page, big building size is better than small building size when considering a cap rate. And the reason is that there are costs that are not variable, fixed costs. It costs the same to get an appraisal or have your accountant do the workup on 20 units as it does to 30 units. So if you spread the cost over a greater income base, it's a better investment. Every building has 2 doors, back and front. You repair one for 100 units or you repair one for 20 units. It's kind of the same amount of money. So that's why a larger unit is a better investment risk. And 30 is the minimum number for this, and this one has 21. Year built is obvious because even if you renovate, you did not replace the foundation and the frame, and nor is the major portion of the envelope been replaced. Those were the factors that design and layout. The best mix is a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units in Winnipeg in this location. This particular building only has limited 2 bedroom units. We have it down as only having 1 2-bedroom unit and the rest being 1 bedrooms. And that is a negative factor. Essentially, if you have a long-term tenant and they have a change in their status, moving them into another unit in the building is their preference, and it's a good business practice. But it's also that the market has a mix of those types of users, 1s and 2s. And I have inspected this building lots and lots of times because my oldest son took guitar lessons from the guy in the building, so I got to go in there a lot prior to renovation. And now going back to the Collier's concept of interest rates versus cap rates on page 20, this is the table that is now in place in our cap rate report. This is what the assessor doesn't provide to you. So you'll note that on page 20 in Q1, that the commercial mortgage rates we have listed at 3%, and the average cap rate at 5.5%, and then the bond rate at about 1.5%. So the spread from bond to cap is the key here at 403 points. And you can see how the spread has remained fairly constant through time. This is now what we have to look at to determine if the cap rate is real. So if someone comes along and says a 3% or a 4%, it doesn't fit anymore. You're making stuff up, and you're doing it, presenting the wrong way. This is the way all of our reports now have to be done. Now, in Q1 2021, we also introduced the page 29. And we now do this debt advisory services. Now, this one is dated August 2021. I'm not going to talk about post-reference information because you can see the charts are all historical. So we now do this. And so when someone comes to us with the new product and there's a purchase and we're advising on the purchase, we're advising on valuation, we have to look at this. And this goes back to our cap rate report. So there's the graph at the bottom. The one which is recapturing what I just showed you is the top of page 30. And you can see Q1. Now this report, because it's dated later, shows the spread has risen to 409 basis points in Q2, but the other one showed you Q1. Again, it's a constant spread. And this is old-fashioned appraising. This is the way that appraisers who are now retiring were taught to appraise with mortgage equity. What is the spread between the interest rate and your equity requirements? And that was always applied in the past as a test of sanity of your cap rates. Now Colliers is trying to remind people of it again, and you have to maintain those spreads. Again, not me. This is Colliers, and this is a report that we're trying to. If someone's going to quote a low cap rate, there's got to be an upside. There's got to be after sale, big increase in revenue coming. Otherwise, you're misleading, and that you have to focus on this. So doing that, and this is how our caps are derived, and we see the 5%. 5% is the lowest. The average 5.5%. All properties are not created equal. We're putting this one at 5.75% for the reasons we've said. Parking, I think the real thing about parking is the inability to hit the top numbers in rent. Because if you're going to get the top numbers, you want to rent them to people who drive cars. And now they've got nowhere to park them. So you're renting them to people who take the bus, who make less money. It puts a downward pressure on what you can achieve in rent. That's just one example of the thought that goes into these numbers. So 5.75 is the number that our system would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama.
No questions for now, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
Just some clarification, the 23 points to which you refer that Colliers uses in determining their cap rate, for want of a better word, those are factors that are included in the modeling that Colliers uses.
Yes, the first time they showed there that I ever saw them was about 2008. And when I joined Colliers, and we used the 23-point system, and it's been in place for a long time. Now, the numbers assigned were ones that I gathered through discussion with appraisers across the country and brokers across the country, and they're just common sense. Everything has to do with your ability to earn money. The modeling algorithm also takes into account the interest rates versus the cap rates, or is that a different factor that's yes, that's where it's now primary sourced is to look at the money markets to determine, well, in this case it's presented as commentary and on the 4 basis points. When you find something that doesn't meet there, they won't use the cap rate in our study. I think that is a better way of explaining it.
So there's a variable aspect to the generation of your cap rate, Colliers cap rates, based on the factors and the interest rates versus cap rates.
Right. So let's just say our system gets a cap rate that's saying a face rate of 4%. And we would say that doesn't seem right. And then we have to do investigation further. Was there preferential financing? Was it based on an income change down the road? So then the broker or the appraiser who does that report can then, if he wants to include it in the study, then either look for an adjustment on it, if he can actually do it, or toss it out.
Thank you.
We still do stuff by hand.
Is there any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Neufeld, so you came on this property before the Board of Revision last term. You filed your results. So the property had been assessed previously at $2,766,000, and you successfully got it reduced to $2,285,000. The Board of Revision.
Oh, yeah, there was case management and there was an adjustment made lower.
Oh, it's been okay.
Yeah.
Case management, and so that was agreed upon then. Then it wasn't opposed.
I don't have the new lower number because I think it just got processed 2 months ago.
Yeah, well, it just shows that you were the person who attended on it.
Yes.
However it was done. So you accepted then, assessed the last one as $2,285,000.
No, I didn't. I appealed it.
Oh, you did build it? Because you said
No, that's this was prepared. Our database didn't have, I tracked the result numbers, and this came from our result number. It came from the board order.
Yeah.
At the board revision. There was a subsequent 15-1 signed at municipal board. I think it was about 2 months ago. And it was for a additional decrease, and I don't remember the number. It was, I think, 2.1 maybe, or something like that.
Okay, you're surmising, but you said it was less than the order that you received last time.
Yes.
And was it based on a capitalization rate of 5%?
Can I look at my phone?
You know what? I guess I did you have it on your phone?
I might have the cert on my phone. In my emails.
You know, it's gonna take a long time for that. I think,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think my question is that pertinent, that it matters that much, so, no.
Okay.
If it's gonna be that painful, no.
Never say that your questions aren't pertinent.
Well, it might not be that pertinent, okay?
Mr. Chairman, I may have to object in discussing the previous decisions of the Board of Revision.
Okay. Ms. Valderrama, can you clarify though, was this not a municipal board, you know, or did it?
I think it's as part of discussions going on in the past. The decisions of Board of Revision shouldn't be discussed, the past decisions, and shouldn't be included, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, we were working with Ryan on this property. Yes.
Okay. You know what? I thought brother asked her.
Yeah, no, it's fine. If he doesn't want to talk about it, I think they were all done without prejudice. Fine.
Okay, so you're now asking for us to lower the assessment to $2,264,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And the old number is 2,151,000.
Mr. Chair, if I may clarify, I'm pertaining to the actual Board of Revision decision that's being discussed right now.
It was material that was filed by Mr. Neufeld. So I was just referring to some of his evidence.
Correct. Which I think that's what I'm objecting to. Sorry. If I should have clarified that one earlier.
Okay, well, if it comes up again, you can do that. Okay, we'll close on this one then, and we'll proceed now to 85 Hargrave. You ready, Mr. Valderrama?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next property has a file number of 22-937. It has a roll number of 12092565000. It is located at 85 Hargrave Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023, using the reference date of April 1st, 2021. It is assessed at $1,856,000. It is residential 2 with a liability of taxable. It is a residential apartment with 1 building, 2 stories, an actual year built of 1959, and an effective year built of 1974. Has a land area of 6,056 square feet, a planned area of 3,397 square feet, and a gross floor area of 10,191 square feet. On page 3 are a couple of photos for the subject property. On next page, page 4, is the income valuation summary. There are 16 units with a calculated average monthly rent per unit of $902.27. The gross potential rent is at $173,236. It has a vacancy rate of 4.7%. In terms of dollars, it is 8,142, yielding an effective gross income of $165,094. Using expense ratio of 45.47% or $75,068. The net operating income is $90,026. Using the capitalization rate of 4.85%, the capitalized income is $1,856,206 or $1,856,000 rounded. On the next page are some rent comparables. There are 4. The first one is located at 75 Killarney Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $945. The second one is located at 825 Corridon Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $974. The third one is located at 346 Arbuthnot Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $930. And the last one is located at 499 Corridon Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $903. The next page is the map of the subject property and the comparable rents or leases. Page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. On page 9 is the 2020 income and expense information of the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, how did the effective year get changed to 1974 from 1959?
I wasn't able to review the particulars in terms of renovations that were completed on this property, Mr. Chairman. But based on that one, I believe there were some. I just didn't have the information on what transpired in terms of the permits.
And in your model, would that have made a difference in the cap rate?
As indicated earlier, the effective year built, I believe, is being looked at by the model instead of the actual year built when there is a significant difference.
And I guess we've been over the ground already in discussion of the cap rate. It's fine. Those are the only questions then.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
Just with respect to the outdoor parking, it's, the photo on page 3 shows the subject property, and it says there's 8 spots. I believe, yeah, sorry, 8 spots, 8 parking spots. Is that entire parking lot part of the subject property, or do you know?
Based on the photos, maybe some of it may be in the back. of the property.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And so I'm looking at your comparable rents, and I note that the locations differ significantly from the subject. And I also noticed that the square footage of the properties, by comparisons, are quite a bit larger. So do you think that these are fair comparisons?
They're within the same market region. They may not be really close, like a few blocks away, but these are within the same market region, Mr. Chairman.
What about square footage?
In terms of the square footage, an adjustment may be looked at. However, the way I chose these comparable rents were based on the ratio of the bedroom units. So I was trying to get almost the same ratio or more on the 1-bedroom units.
So would suite rent be based on the number of bedrooms and square footage not be considered?
I have no information on that one, Mr. Chairman. If a unit is being rented based on square footage or more on the number of bedroom units.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's my questions then. So Mr. Yuko.
Okay, thank you. I think our incomes are fairly close. I just point out that we use the actual income that was reported to the assessment department, $88,259, and the assessor has also put that in his brief. There are some small differences there in the income, particularly his potential income is much higher, but then his expense rate is higher. I think we would prefer the actual applied. Generally, it's more accurate because modeling is prone to errors. The cap rate, of course, is the issue, and without repeating everything, I go back to our start point, which is the way Colliers now devises caps, and the range in product between really good product and average product in this is now reported at 5 to 6%. We have adjusted that on page 2 for a number of factors. First, again, our cap rates include closing costs, and so therefore those have to be taken out of the capital cost, and that brings that up. And incidentally, when we say 3 points, that works out to about 0.15%, 0.15 points in the total cap rate by itself. It's not 3 points or anything. It's a fraction of the total as an adjustment. Now there's a mistake here. Access one-way street. And I don't think anybody cares it's a one-way street. So that shouldn't have been adjusted for. So I'm going to change my cap downwards. Site size small, that is an issue. And that it's just a small infill site, and making it absolutely no potential for doing anything else on it. The parking stalls, 8 stalls for 16 units is downward pressure on the rental rates you can achieve. And incidentally, the parking lot next door is owned by the office building owner at 310 Broadway, which is currently Sundance College, and it's their parking for their office building. Nothing to do with this unit. They just have the stalls at the back. The building size is probably one of the major problems with this at just 16 units. Again, it's a question of fixed costs versus variable costs. It's just a very not a broad enough base to you're going to suffer from variances in your expenses every year when you get fixed costs, and the design and layout It's bachelors and one bedrooms, which bachelors are not a desirable unit. There were a lot built, and they're, but it's not hot in the market. It's ones and twos. That's the downward issue. Year built, same issue. It's older construction, and just the associated costs with any sort of work on it, foundations, framing, envelope, they're still original. So they're still going to require brick repointing, as an example. That, say, a modern finish may not have if it went to siding or composites. So the actual cap we're going to use is 6%. I mentioned that there was that error. The question of access is more of a retail problem, not an apartment problem, unless there's something severely wrong. So I'm changing 625 to 6%. My value is 1,470,983, 1,470,983, rounded to 1,471,000. And the previous year assessment, I don't think anyone challenged that. That's it's small, and that's its downside in the investment market. It's not going to. One of the things is that there's different buyers. So, say a small investor who doesn't have a lot of money may find interest in it, but he's not going to be able to attract low-priced interest rates. So it's going to drive up the cap rates as well. That's just another factor that we look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Olorama, any questions? Any questions, Mr. Olorama?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, just a clarification, Mr. Chairman, on the appellant's brief on page 3.
Okay.
So the sale, this property almost doesn't have any one-bedroom units, correct?
This sale,
On page 3.
this was just this one is not being referred to in this report. This is just part of our package, and we'll get to a property where I can explain why I put this in, is because, but I'll tell you now, when people do a cap rate calculation, it's got to be at time of sale. This one was figured out at time of sale, and this is how it's to be done. The vendor hires investment analysts, in this case, Don White and Brian Talio. They calculated the NOI that a purchaser was going to receive, and they then present it. They don't go back and get a statement from a year ago and apply it. This is at time of sale. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Any other questions, Mr. Olorama?
No other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, Ben, do you have any questions?
Just one with respect to page 2, your graph or your comparisons between the optimal cap rate and the subject cap rate. Under this modeling, the lowest, or sort of the lowest possible cap rate is 5%. Is that what am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Was there any questions?
No, sir.
And I don't either. Thank you very much. So we'll now go to 10 Sparrow Road. Are you ready, Mr. Boldrum?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Which property are we going to?
In Sparrow?
10 Sparrow. Okay, hang on. I'm just gonna pull it up. I pulled up 1945 Portage Avenue. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Oops, wrong. Oh, here we go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-892. It has a roll number of 01004751500. It is located at 10 Sparrow Road. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $13,974,000. It's classified as a residential 2 with the liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 7 buildings, 3 stories. That's an actual and effective year built of 1979. It has 84 suites with 84 outdoor parking, a land area of 136,309 square feet, a planned area of 25,732 square feet, and a gross floor area of 77,196 square feet. On page 3 and page 4 are the photos of the subject property. On page 5, I do have the income valuation summary. Total units of 84 with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,283.57. It has a gross potential rent of $1,293,839. Using a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $41,403. The effective gross income is $1,252,436. Applying an expense ratio of 42.54% or $532,786, the net operating income is $719,650. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.15%, the capitalized income is $13,973,786 or $13,974,000 rounded. On the next page, page 6, there are 4 rent comparables. First one is located at 465 Lonark Street. That's an average monthly rent per unit of $1,290. The second one is located at 555 Lonark Street. Has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,289. Third one is located at 495 Lanark Street. Has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,338. And the last one is located at 5445 Roblin Boulevard. That's an average monthly rent per unit of $1,424. On the next page is the map of the subject property and comparable leases. On page 8 is the capitalization rates. And on page 9, pages 9 and 10 is where the income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Nebo?
Just a few. Is this location, how does the assessment department classify this as a location? Do you know in their ranking?
I am not sure of the question. However, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure of the question ranking. I'm not aware of any.
Okay. And have you, this is all done by the model?
Correct, Mr. Chairman, yes. It
Now,
is a model parameter.
When you input this into the model, is there a way for you to tell the model that you're dealing with 7 buildings in total on this site? Or do you just put in the total square footage and the number of units? Do you know?
There is when we enter it in terms of the buildings. However, in terms of producing the income valuation, I'm not sure how the model is taking that into account.
Well, no, I was just wondering because the expense ratio seems to be somewhat consistent with some of the other ones you brought forward. And I'm wondering if the model has a way of determining that, you know, because you have 7 separate buildings, you've got additional costs for repairs and maintenance that you wouldn't normally see. Do you know if it does that?
I have no information on that one. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, I was just looking at the last one, which was 45%, and this is 42%. And I was just curious about that. And what about capitalization rates? Do you have anything, any of your data to show if there's a difference in based on this type of property, like being a multi site like this?
I don't have that information in terms of different buildings of a property type like this.
And was there a commercial influence in this property when the cap rate was calculated? Is there an input for that, like a commercial influence of any sort?
I don't have that information with me. Sorry. No.
Okay, because like in your single family residential housing, if it's located next to a commercial node, it will say as a site influence. But you know if you do that, you don't know if you do that for multifamily.
I'm not, I don't have the information with me, so I'm not sure if it was input or not input in the classification or characteristics or influence.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
I do actually. So the comparables that you're using, Lanark, and only one on Roblin, is that because nothing else sold in the area, that Charleswood area at the time? You know, you couldn't find any similar buildings to the one that we're looking at? That we had to go so far into River Heights?
Mr. Chairman, I was looking at this property and I was looking at rent comparables depending on the bedroom mix again on this one. Hopefully closer to the total number of units. However, I mean, it is really hard to find having 1 and 2 bedroom units closer to the total units of the subject property. So I tried really hard to find at least the bedroom mix to compare to the subject property. And these are all rent comparables. So they may or may not have sold within the past how many years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Matt, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, around, I'm looking at the statements that you filed that were provided by the owner, and it, I think, shows an actual net operating income of $436,191.08. And in arriving at that, are there any numbers that you take exception to that give rise to that amount?
Is there a question, Mr. Chairman? I just wanted to clarify your question.
Well, I'm looking at the statement you filed as part of the evidence, and indicates that it looks to me like they're claiming that there's an actual NOI of $436,191.08.
Right.
I'm just wondering if there's anything in that column that they're taking as deductions that you take exception to.
I can see some already, Mr. Chair, just by looking at a few underneath and the last few lines. Mortgage principal, mortgage payment to mortgage payment, amortization. And it looks like if I do the math, it looks like it may hit 700,000 as an NOI or more without calculating it just by doing a rough math. So adding back the mortgage payments 1 and 2, amortization, and removing the mortgage principal reduction, that's roughly around 300,000 right there or more. So that's about 700,000 on the bottom line or the net income, Mr. Chairman.
You know, okay, I'm just looking, it looks like they're reducing the mortgage principal reduction though, so it looks like they're reducing the expenses by that, isn't that the case?
Probably, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure what the intent or motivation on those, on reporting those as an expense.
Okay, and they're showing an expense for property tax appeal of $13,102.23. Is that something that is recognized by your department?
I am not sure of that. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman. I don't have that. I don't have the line item. I just get the expense ratio. So that's the totality of expenses.
So basically, yeah, you're following a model the city uses, and you take the model NOI and you take a model expenses that probably that should happen, come up with an amount in NOI, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
And as Ms. Knight pointed out, your comparables, again, I see that they're in a different area, and some of them they're all larger, but some of them, one of them, your comparable number 2 is significantly larger. So do you feel that your rank comparables are reasonable?
One is definitely way larger than the others. The three, I mean, they're within 100 square feet of difference from the subject property. Yes, they are bigger. However, I'm not sure how the market really looks at total gross floor area per unit compared to the number of bedrooms or versus number of bedrooms in a unit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, you answered that. Okay. Mr. Upelt, you can go ahead with your evidence.
Yes, thank you. The subject property has been undergoing renovation, building by building, and major renovation. And so what we found when we looked at the historical statements was some tremendous inconsistencies. So, for example, in the current statement from 2020, the repair and maintenance budgeted 82,000, spent 73,000. Previous years, it was over 100,000. So when we inquired as to this discrepancy, they felt that they weren't going to have to spend repair and maintenance when they were essentially doing capital work. And the capital, same ownership as the other two we discussed, they don't put capital in these statements. When you'll notice that the rehabilitation in this case, which I told you was large scale, there's no entry. So that rehabilitation is only saved for short term. So as a result, the statements, if you do go through them, they actually support what the assessor says, but I don't think that they're reliable for our use, and we're going to have there's differences all over. And one of the interesting ones is the assessor, for example, has used a rent of $1,200, and on page 2, my report says now leasing $950. That's obviously a smaller unit, but we did decide to use the assessor's income and expense calculation as being more reliable than a statement coming from a time when things were changing. So our issue here is the cap rate, and what we did is we looked at the product again and start with our base again, taking off the closing costs. Now the location, I think, is a big issue. This is near the perimeter, and quite some distance from the city center. It's generally been a neighborhood where the south of Roblin has generally been a mix of homes that have been there for 60 years or homes that are low income. And that's the nature of this neighborhood. I actually lived there. I went to TF school and my kids went to Oak Park. But it's not like a desirable neighborhood for multifamily. The best in the city is actually St. Boniface, and next you see areas like Elmwood coming up for interest from multifamily. And then you have the Osborne areas. This is probably at the bottom of the scale for desirability. And these are wood framed 3-story walk-ups, and there's 7 of them, and they're equal sized units, total of 84. So that puts 12 units per building. And so the configuration being the separate buildings was something that we thought was going to cost a lot more money on the fixed cost side. You know, take for example, you heard 21 Roslyn, front door, back door, 112 units. 10 Sparrow, 14 doors, 7 fronts, 7 backs on 84 units. That's just an example of fixed costs versus variable costs. So it's a negative factor. And also the envelope. An apartment block is generally configured to have as little envelope as possible because your envelope is a source of costs, and it's thermal loss if you're paying for the utilities. This has, being a collection of small units, has probably 2.5 times the amount of envelope that it would if it were combined. So this is a negative from an investor. These aren't major things; these are just a bunch of small little things. And then we looked at you know the year built again, wood framing, and our rate was 6.25%, and the number based on the assessor's income is 11.5. Last assessment was 10.9, so see very little that is going to happen. Now, at this point in time, with this income, my understanding is that most of the renovations had already occurred, and the incomes that are being generated were at an improved level, and so I don't see the income going up from the statement income at all either. That would be another thing to look at. That's my presentation.
Thank you. So, there are any questions?
Mr. Chair, yes, just want to clarify on page 17 of Mr. Neufeld's briefs. Just wanted to ask, so the way the cap rate is done by Colliers or by Mr. Neufeld, wanted to clarify that too as well. So it's based on bond markets, bond yields, and all these. Is that correct, Mr. Neufeld?
Well, and again, I gotta hesitate to say, I wouldn't use the word relies on it. I mean, a cap rate, the way we were taught as appraisers was always look at the market rates, look at a mortgage equity to determine if the actual rates are reliable. And in the last 10 years, 15 years, people have have stopped looking at it because there's been a more aggressive market, and and we also have a less sophisticated investor who really they're striving to get into real estate and motivated to do so, and don't look at the depth required to look at an investment. So what we're trying to remind investors about is that there has to be a relationship between achieved rates and the money markets. There has to be. And if there isn't, there's something wrong with your rate. And that's why I'm saying, when we find something wrong with them, we can either look at correcting them or not using them. And for appraisers, what we can see is there anything that would actually indicate such a strong upside for a really low rate? In which case it would be the exception. And that would be, for example, an apartment block that was renovated and now has double the income, but only half the capital put in. And then you would think, on the face, the old sale is going to show a low cap. When you put in the capital, it'll show a normal cap, and you balance it off. So it's just more critical thought being added to it. It's an insult to our profession to be so glib about cap rates. And we should not be. We have to think about them.
I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, is the appraisal community adopting a new way to determine a cap rate, or are they still using, as an appraiser, the appraisal community still uses the same methodology as net operating income divided by the sale price?
The appraisal community has all been taught the same way, and that is to understand the band of investment concept and to understand that they have to relate and they have to understand the concept of anticipation. We're just out to remind them of how you were taught and of what really matters. There's an aggressive market, and it's not just vendors and purchasers, it's lenders. They want to lend money, and it just can't be. We're hired to provide people with sensible advice. We don't want you to be in a position where you think a low cap makes sense and it comes time to make your mortgage payment and you can't make it because there's been a blip in the rates. This is our job. And it's not a cut and dried issue of what a cap rate is. We're trying to earn our money and do the right thing.
So yeah, that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, any questions?
A couple questions with respect to your graph or your table on page 2, the optimal versus the subject property to arrive at your cap rate. Who populates the optimal is likely already populated, but who populates or decides on the number assigned for each category in the subject property?
Well, our team, so there's the three of us who work on it, and some things are just obvious, like they call your closing costs, and then the rest is a bullpen session just to go through these. I told you I caught one, and the other one that was wrong, and I'm looking at one here that I'm not entirely sure should be in here either. Well, the unit counts, design and layout, but the reason I didn't adjust this is because the design and layout is subpar. It should be that the concept of all these separate buildings in a complex, that's not good design and layout for earning money. So the answer, I'm sorry, the answer was we work on it as an analyst team, and we also have in brokerage side we have the investment team and all their analysts, and we get to a difficult situation and we say, what do you think the impact of this is? We've got other experts to consult, and they would go to their market experiences and discuss it. And the next case up, you'll see where we actually went to our investment analysts for some advice.
If that wasn't done here.
On this one, no. Well, actually, no. I reviewed this one 2 years ago with our investment team, and just to get a feel for like the location issues and the type of development, and just it was, we had a feeling that subjectively location was subpar and the layout was subpar. So in this one, I remember going to one of our guys, it was Don White or Brian Talio, and just reviewing this and say, what does the market think of things like this? And the answer was, well, not very well. It's not a good product.
Wait, so that's the subjective entry that's made.
Yes.
With respect to the closing costs, I see you've got a suboptimal 0 entered in. That should be presumably closing costs are going to be the same as a percentage basis of either the optimal or the subject property, are they not?
Yeah, well, the closing costs, the closing costs, when Colliers does a cap rate report at 5% being below 1, what they do is say something sells for $1 million, there's going to be land transfer fees, roughly 2%. So then they adjust the sale price upwards to $1,020,000. Now there could be a commission. There's generally a commission, and let's say it's 3%. So then the sale price is then adjusted upward to $1,050,000.
Yes, I understand that.
So all we're doing is
0 here.
Yes, we're taking it out. Well, the way the math works is when you take it out, it's a negative adjustment. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And the way it's written up is 100, you see at the bottom, it's 100, and we came up with a score of 80. And all we did is took the inverse of that and applied it to 5%.
Yes, I understand the math.
Okay.
I just don't understand how you can take the closing costs and call it a detriment, which will increase your cap rate. That makes no sense to me.
But because the sale prices are artificially higher. If the sale price were in Colliers, when in Winnipeg, we know this for sure. Now, when the sale price is artificially higher, your cap rate will be artificially lower. So you take them out and the cap rate rises. Because that's the side of the math where the sale price, because the income would always then stays the same.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any questions? Diane, do you have any questions?
Sorry, I was on mute. I do not.
And I don't either, so we can go on now with the last matter on the agenda, which is 336 Ward Avenue. Mr. Boardroom, are you ready?
Just a few seconds, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to pull it up. 336 Ward. Okay, 336 Ward. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-894, has a roll number of 0802-099-8900. It is located at 336 Ward Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 with the reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $15,411,000. It is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 1 building, 3 stories, an actual and effective year built of 2013. It has 60 units or suites with 94 outdoor parking, a land area of 78,623 square feet, a planned area of 20,717 square feet, and a gross floor area of 62,151 square feet. On page 3 are a couple of photos of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. There are 60 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,586.36 or $1,586.36. Has a gross potential rent of $1,142,179. Applying a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $36,550. The effective gross income is $1,105,629. Using an expense ratio of 38.67% or $427,547. The net operating income is $678,082. Applying the capitalization rate of 4.4%, the capitalized income is $15,410,955 or $15,411,000 rounded. On the next page, page 5, are the rent comparables. There are 4. The first one is located at 130 Sage Creek Boulevard. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,758. On the next one, second comparable, is located at 250 St. Anne's Road. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,563. The third one is located at 24 Hastings Boulevard. Has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,693. And on page 4, or on the fourth column, the last rent comparable is located at 919 St. Anne's Road. has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,645. And on page 6 is the map of the subject property and the comparable leases. On page 7 is the capitalization rate study. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. On pages 9 and 10 is where the 2020 income and expense information is. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Newton, any questions?
Page 4, is this all done by the model?
Yes, these are all model-driven parameters, Mr. Chairman.
And did you look at the statements?
I attached them for reference.
Okay, but you didn't consider them in the valuation?
No, I went with the model derived parameters.
And the 4.4% cap rate, that's outside your 20 and 80th percentile? Is that correct?
Correct. It is outside of the 60% parcels within the city.
Now, you earlier talked about they only represent 60% of the sales. Well, what does the word outliers mean to you?
Well, they're just outside of the 60% or the 20th or 80th percentile.
But outliers in statistical analysis are excluded from further analysis, aren't they? That's why they call them outliers.
If they are really far off from the statistical in your range or analysis, in this case, this may be close at around 4.4%.
What's the standard deviation?
I am not sure. I have no information on that one.
Well, that's in statistical analysis. When it exceeds a certain standard deviation, it's an outlier and you don't use it, period. So you don't know what the numbers are in your model?
Correct. I am not aware or no information on that statistical deviation or standard deviation.
Those are my questions.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any questions in the assessor?
I have no questions.
I have nothing.
Thank you,
Thanks.
ma'am.
And I don't either. Mr. Newton.
Just a bit of rebuttal. The assessment services across Canada that actually show us their work in statistical analysis tend to frown upon using anything over 10 points standard deviation from the norm, the average. So in this case, if the average is 5.2%, that would mean if you stray below 4.7, it's not going to be considered reliable for analysis. But we don't do statistical analysis in Manitoba. We talk about the market. And the market on this is the income is shown on page 4 and 5. Again, this is the same company who prepared the other statements. I know I'm at the risk of sounding like I'm trying to bolster my last one. Rehabilitation, nothing is listed because there is no major rehabilitation here because it's virtually new and it doesn't need it. So they're not carrying that budget for turning over suites and spending the money in renovation that they might have on an older one. Now you'll note here that the amortization 185, mortgage 623, and then the credit of 224. So that does leave a difference of that has to be adjusted to the NOI by about 600,000. And you'll see on our page 1, we made those adjustments. So our NOI calculation was 646, or actually 614 for that particular year. And then we did the same thing if we looked at the last year of income and an average of the expenses and come up with an NOI of 647,002. And this is fairly much more accurate than the method that the assessor uses because you take a model and put it on a specific building, you're going to have a margin of error. The interesting point here is, and this is something that I'll talk about later in the cap, but you'll notice in 2019, the income was higher than in 2020. This is a building that suffers. It's one of the first ones that came onto the market with a fairly higher rental rate. And, you know, the assessor's using 1586 a unit. It's not quite that high, but that's at the upper end. But what happens with units at that level is the ratchet effect I was talking about earlier. You'll see on page 4 that the vacancy is higher, closer to 5%, and the discounts are about 2%. So, and this is typical of the new units because they're competing with the 1 month free world. And when you're 1 month of when your year is up, a lot of the tenants will shop for another place that'll give them the 1 month free. It's one of the aspects of apartments at the upper level. And this one, the 2 on Ward Avenue particularly have suffered from this. This one and the one across the street, lots of similarities. So it's one of those cases where you can't consider that the last year that the income perpetually grows. And the other reason it doesn't perpetually grow is it's above residential tenancy branch amounts. So it's not regulated. It's subject to market changes. And clearly it's showing market changes. It's a feature we haven't seen in Manitoba for a long time. But as I said, this is one of the first ones coming onto the market who were built this way. So we're using the actual income and the cap rate. Again, we did our work up and we came up with 5.49. Now, the issue, the first issue, this one is a little bit different in that we have a negative adjustment because normally we assume that you have good property rights, but in this case, there's actually an easement that they had to get access from for the site from the neighboring property. You see on page 1, the outline of the site. It does not have access. So when you have an easement in it, it's a question of you're obviously the servient, not the dominant, and there is an agreement, but it's always trouble down the road.
That's not been my experience, Mr. Nico. That an easement gives you rights of access, egress, and I don't see that as a problem.
In our field, we do get a fair amount of it, and what it usually is the property managers have to deal with it. You're parking in my space where I'm supposed to come in. I understand from the legal perspective, it gives you rules. In a practical world, it gives you problems like that. But
Are you saying there's parking spots on the easement?
No, but to get through. So
because you can't park on roadways anywhere.
Yeah, but
whether there's an easement or not.
If the dominant guy goes and parks and puts up, we have this 2554 portage was always a big problem. You had a maneuvering area, and one of the users was always parking his cars on it. The other one was always complaining about it. So it is a practical issue. And incidentally, this is the major point. This comes to 1/10 of 1 percentage point on the cap. Might just mean extra legal costs. The other issue was having to do with income growth, being at the top of the market. There's no upside. There's nowhere to go. A lot of these other ones we looked at, there was still some potential for upside, because if you were performing at a place where you could put in capital, improve your site, and earn more money, then there was a chance of doing it. An investor likes that. This one's got nowhere to go, and then the other issue I talked about was the stability, which is the turnover, which you can see in the annual income. So your investor's gonna look at that and he's probably gonna discount it. Now, the last issue on this is I think is very, I consulted with our people, and they gave me the information shown on page 3, and this is across the street. This is a very similar unit. And our people did the analysis, calculated the income from it, stabilized it. What actually was at time of sale, 989,000. It sold for 18 million. And that was the actual sale price. It was a share sale. There were no closing costs to consider. And that was the reported price. And that cap is 5.49%. And we're not going to see a change on that with time, because nothing has gotten more attractive about this as an investment. We're already performing at the peak of the market. So that's where we're looking at 5.5% on the actual income. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bellarama.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
I do not.
Tonight?
I do not, thank you.
I guess my only question right now, Mr. As you indicated that you're comparing using the property across the street with a share sale. And a share sale, if a couple of Castellans was taken, means that the recapture will be made by the purchaser. So that's got to be considered in the price, right?
Well, yes, there's always the issue of
Right.
are there any retained earnings hanging in there, and
Was any depreciation taken?
and that's why I relied on the work of our investment crew who were dealing with those issues, and presented as a clean transaction.
Do we know that?
Yes, because that's
They saw the statements, they saw
Yes,
income tax notifications.
and that's when I said we have experts we can go to. In this case, we had one, and there was nothing coming out of it that was going to be an income tax issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've now completed all items in the agenda. I'm going to close the hearing, and everybody are here with our orders as soon as they're out. Thank you.